introduction and your thoughts on this. I think that's a very wonderful question. And yes, I think that it would be really, it's very important to have training as a parent, or at least a lot of information. I know a lot of people, when they begin parenting, they have some reactions to how their parents were and how they were parented. So very often they're doing what their parents did if they really loved it, or they're doing the opposite if they really didn't like it. And so I think it's nice to really take a look at that. When I was working as a school psychologist decades ago, about the age of 23, I thought I have to write a parenting book. Because I think parenting is, as you said, is the very most important job on the planet. So the topic that you've chosen is mindful parenting. And I was thinking about that, mindful parenting, what is the essence of that? And if I was to choose an essence of mindful parenting, it would be for the parents to be mindful. I know that when decades ago, I used to say that parents were the biggest M&M. So M&M, you may be familiar with this. I don't eat that type of candy anymore, but I used to love it. I could eat a great big bag. And so the parent is the M&M, meaning you are the sweetness in your child's life. You are the love in your child's life. You are everything to that child. And so recognize your own importance. And your own importance comes across so beautifully in your way of being with your child. So to really know who we are, to be aware of our values, to be aware of our virtues, to be comfortable in our own skin, to love ourselves, to model the values. These are things that will feed you and hence feed your child. Because the strength of your love and the vibrations of your love reach your child. Your attitude of love, your attitude of respect, your attitude is everything to your child. If you look at the relations around you, you will see that that's true. And so I'd like to actually begin tonight with a little bit of a visualization. I would like all of you that are parents to think about how you felt before you had your first child. What you were looking forward to. What you wanted for that child. How you felt when the child came. And now, think of the things that you enjoyed when that child was young. Yes, there were challenging times. Yes, it's really hard to be patient when you're tired. But what were the moments that you loved? And maybe look at some of the moments that you've enjoyed with your child as that child has grown. And now I want you to skip over a little bit of their young adult years. And I want you to think about the relationship that you want. when you are an adult and they are a young adult, and when they are an older adult, and when they are older, when they are your age, what do you want that flow of energy to be? What do you want that relationship to be like? Perhaps identify the values that you want them to have in their life that will make them a fine person that anyone would be privileged to know. Yeah. Okay. So I imagine that may have evoked some lovely thoughts in you and the chance to really look at things. So I was thinking, if I had to tell you, and I'm afraid I can talk forever, so I could tell you, many, many, many things about parenting and go on forever. But if I was to just tell you a few things about parenting, one would be that you would model your values. There's an example I give in the book, Nurturing with Peace, Nurturing with Love and Respect, Nurturing with Love and Wisdom, Disciplining with Peace and Respect. And in that, one of the things I say is that if you want your children to be peaceful, that you have to be peaceful. You can't scream at your children to be peaceful. It doesn't work that way. So if you want your children to hold certain values, if you want them to be a certain way, then it's important for us to be that way. If we want our children to be loving, then to be loving. If we want our children to be respectful, be respectful. Be respectful with all of your family, but also be respectful with others outside of the family. Be respectful to those that help you in the house or in your work, in your community. But model your values, because they will pick up on that more than anything else. I know that I was very fortunate. I had a father that treated me with a lot of respect throughout my childhood and throughout my adult life. So I never knew until I got to university that women were supposed to be inferior. And I learned it in the sociology class, but I had no idea because I was treated with such respect. Perhaps even more so than my brothers were. I have 3 brothers. And it was very interesting. But I think that that view of the father towards the children is very important, as is the view of the mother, and is the treatment of the father towards the mother. Because if the children see the father treating the mother without respect, then sometimes even if the mother is treating the children with respect, then there will not be that respect back. So it is a mutual thing, very, very much. Husbands and wives and parenting. And it works very well when you're moving along the road together and have that harmony in the house. And very often there is harmony. Very often there cannot be harmony. And so how can we create that harmony? What can we do? There is some interesting research. One researcher studied relationships with parents, and he would observe couples for 10 minutes. And at the end of 10 minutes, he could predict if the marriage would stay intact or how soon they would get a divorce. But his thing was, it's so important to have positive language and positive relationship with each other that there should be very few negatives. So that's one thing. Another thing that I always recommend, and usually it's the first thing I recommend if parents are having problems with children, is I recommend that they have play and us time. And the reason I recommend that is that relationship is everything in parenting. When you play with your children, when you have family time, when you have us time, you're building relationships. You're building good relationships. I love the saying that when there's love, there's cooperation. So make sure you're spending 10 to 15 minutes every day with your child, just enjoying them. I remember one study years ago, and in this study there was children that misbehaved. And the only intervention they were asked to do is to play with their children 3 times a week for 20 minutes. Within 3 weeks, 50% of the negative behaviors disappeared. But this goes with everything. I remember a very serious case where a child was so negative that they had to hire a teacher's aide to be with him at school. Because at 5, he would take children's hands and put them in the door and slam them. And my intern came to me for supervision. And I said, you know, what kind of plan have you made? And he told me, and I looked at him and I said, I bet that isn't working. And he said, how did you know? And I said, well, you've forgotten one thing. You've arranged everything behaviorally, but you've forgotten the love. A child has to have love. And if a child isn't getting love, that child will increase their negative behavior just to get attention because they need connection. And so we were able to easily change that around just by having the aide play with a child for 20 minutes twice during that time. I notice that as parents in the current era are spending more time on the screen, and as their children are spending more time on the screen, there is often less time together, less eye contact, less conversations, and it's really lovely to have family time where parents and children don't have any electronics, don't have phones on. If you want, put them in the basket. It may be hard initially if you're not used to it. But wow, does it make a difference to have a family game night, to do something as a family, just to be without the phones and to relate to each other, to converse, to have gratitude circles, to watch things together, to walk together, to play together. There's so many things that we can do to just enjoy. I was just on vacation for a couple of weeks, and it was so much fun to spend time. A couple of women and I went up to Mount Shasta. And so at night we'd play games and play cards. And we meditated a bit. And we just had such a wonderful time walking in nature and being. But being is so lovely. And very often children don't get to be. I know that one school district in Southern California a few years ago, they suggested to the parents that for 1 week, this is in an elementary school, that they actually not have the children play with electronics. And one family, they had 3 children. And they tried this for a week, and they found that their own 3 children got along so much better with each other. And as well, they had so much more time enjoying their children without interference that they decided to permanently not have electronics during the week. That would be a lot harder to do with teenagers. There may be great rebellion at that, but to have family time. And you may get a hard time about it for a week. I know when I had kids in the house decades ago, when I first imposed the rule of only 30 minutes of television a night, there was a real protest, and they said that their natural mother always allowed them to watch TV all day. And I told them, well, the rules in this house are different, and here you can pick a program you like, but you only get to watch TV 30 minutes a day. But after that first weekend with me, they had every other weekend and 3 weeks in the summer. And after that first weekend, there was never another complaint, because they got to play, they got to cook, they got to learn to do things, they got to go to the beach, they got to do wonderful things, and they loved it and grew greatly in many, many ways. And it was a very wonderful time. I'm going to show you a model, if you don't mind. I think Jay-Ben has given me the ability to show my screen. Is that true, Jay-Ben?
Yes, you can.
Okay, fabulous. So I'm going to see if I can show this to you. And so there's just one slide I'm going to show with you, to you. And this slide I use for living values education. And I developed this model years ago. So instead of school ethos here, you can put family ethos. But the concept is very simple. Whatever is the behavior of the child, or we could say of anyone in your circle, be it spouse or people at work or anyone, whatever the behavior is, whether it's positive or negative, when we treat people in such a way that they feel loved, respected, valued, understood, and safe, they move towards their potential. When we treat people in such a way that they feel inadequate or unworthy, hurt, afraid, fearful, shamed, or unsafe, they decrease in well-being and they move away from their potential. And so the saying that I like is, stay above this line. So what are the things that allow us to help people around us feel loved, respected, valued, understood, and safe? And each one of you can do this for your own family. so, what are those positive things? And what are the things, what are the negative things that contribute to inadequacy, hurt, feeling afraid, shamed, or unsafe? Because what you get is something very, very different. If your family ethos is perhaps you want love and quality time and cooperation and warmth, quality relationships, what are the things that help do that? Maybe there's a couple of things that are interfering with that. What are those things? It's so easy to go into old traditional patterns of fear and shame and punishment without realizing it. And so I invite you to really look at this model and to think about it and think about the things that really create well-being. In the Brahma Kumaris, we talk about soul consciousness. So when we stay above the line, there's more well-being. Or you could say it's easier to have soul consciousness, or it's easier to be mindful. It's easier to have a loving consciousness, if we put it in other terms. And so play and us time would be one of these things that would really be lovely. Prayer or meditation, family time. Another thing is listening. There's so many things that we can do that can help. But what happens sometimes when we're not pleased, and that's why we need to work on our own mindfulness and our own happiness and our own well-being, is what happens is when we're disappointed with something, we can be upset and we can get angry because we're afraid that for something for us or for the child. And there can be a cycle that goes downwards in terms of hurt or fear or anger, and then anger on the part of the child or resentment. And things can get uncooperative. So it's very interesting to realize that these things are very, very important. Staying above the line is important. I almost feel like I should stop for questions here, but I'll wait for a moment. And I'll give you an example about listening. The picture that you had of me was a younger picture. I'm older now. I have a lot more gray hair. And I have a great niece. And this great niece, I remember a time when she was 4, just the sweetest little kid, and just adorable. And I loved spending time with her. And her mother lived, and her mother lived close by. So she brought the kids over to see me, or I went over to see them every 2 weeks. And so one time I was over there and I just stayed for a couple of hours. And so she was 4 and I was leaving. So one of the things the reason I'm telling you this is because I'm telling you about the skill of listening. Listening is wonderful when children are sharing, but listening is also a skill to help people settle into their feelings and accept their own feelings. And it's also a skill that as a parent allows you to avoid many, many problems. So active listening is a wonderful, wonderful skill. And so anyhow, when it was time to leave, my beautiful little niece, she had a little meltdown. And she started crying and she said, "Oh, Aunt Diane, I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to leave." And she was crying. And so what did I do? I could have said, "I've spent 2 hours with you. You've had a great time. We've had a great time. And now you're going to ruin it by crying." That would be guilt inducement. That would be shaming her. So how can I stay above the line and make her feel loved when she's doing something where she's crying, she doesn't want me to go, she's protesting my action? Okay, who's having the problem? When the child is having the problem, listen. And so all I said to her, as I said, "You don't want me to leave." And she looked at me and she said, "No." So when people are upset, whether it's angry or upset, then there's hurt or fear underneath. So when they're upset and you active listen, they go down to the emotion under that. And then they're closer to their natural state of being. And if we look at what people want, what do people want? What do you want? We all want to be loved, don't we? We all want to be treasured. We all want someone to really see who we are and see our beauty. And so if we know that, it's a great secret. So she's crying. I look at her. "I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to leave." I look at her. I say, "You really don't want me to leave." And close to her, I got up close to her and said it with a lot of love. "You really don't want me to leave?" And she goes, "No." So then I said, well, because she'd settled, then I moved to the next step. I said, "Well, how many kisses do you think you're going to need that will hold you for 2 weeks?" So giving her a choice, moving her from a victim to having a choice, to being a little bit independent, to being able to make a decision. And she thought very seriously. She thought, 4 kisses. So I said, "Well, how about I give you 5 kisses? And that'll hold you for sure for 2 weeks." So I gave her 5 little kisses. And so then I was leaving out the front door and she's happily standing at the front door and waving. So this active listening is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing for little kids. It's a beautiful thing for teenagers. If you have a teenager that comes in and the teenager says to his dad, "That coach is a real jerk. I just don't want to be part of that team anymore. That he's just really, really terrible. I'm just never going to go back to that game and you can't make me," or whatever, but he's angry. The teen is angry and he's telling the parent about it, be it the mother, be it the father. And the parent can say, "I don't want that tone of voice in this house. Go to your room, young man," and slam the door shut on education, on communication. But it's not really a problem with you. It's a problem with a coach. The child is upset. Okay, under anger, there's hurt and fear. So you can active listen. That giving of respect, the loving action of giving respect, brings them down to that place. So you can simply say, "Sounds like you really got upset at school today." It settles them. "Yeah." Not quite settled. They're still upset. "Yeah, I really did. You know what happened?" Okay, now they're talking to you. You know what happened? You know what the coach said today? And they go on with their story, and you say, so you really didn't like it when they said this. No, I didn't. But now they're settled. So you can do something that's an intervention. You can do something like say, well, if you were coach, how would you have handled it? What value do you think the coach could have used? So what value do you think the coach could have used? What could he have said? So now you're helping them build a social skill. I'll give you one more example, an example with an adult in terms of active listening and its power. And this was a very angry parent. It was a very large man, and I was in a school in a gang area. I worked in a wonderful school district, and it had a rich side and a poor side. And I had schools all over the district, but one of them was on the gang side. And I remember one day there was a man screaming, yelling at in the front office. So I came out to see what was happening from the teacher's room. And there was a very large man yelling at the secretary. And I don't like people to yell at anybody, but to yell especially at people that I'm working with. So I actually had to reach up like this to tap him on the shoulder because he was very big. And he just swung towards me and moved his shoulders and he swung towards me and he says, yeah. And I looked at him and I said, you're really concerned about something. Active listening to the emotion. So active listening is you're letting them know that you hear their emotion or the content. So I said, you're really concerned about something. And he instantly dropped his anger and he said, yeah. I said, would you like some help? He said, yeah. I said, great, come with me. He said, all right. So active listening is such a beautiful, beautiful skill. And so in this parenting guide, nurturing with love and wisdom, disciplining with peace and respect. You can get it on Amazon.com. I've made it 99 cents, so there's no excuse for anybody on Kindle, or you can get it in a real book and mark it up. But I'm mentioning it because active listening is going to take time to understand. And you're going to need to read and reread that chapter and practice. I know when I was in graduate school, we spent a year active listening. And it's going to be awkward at first, but it's such a beautiful skill. So, modeling your values, taking care of yourself, so you're full of love, is very important. Spending time with your children every day, playing, giving your full 100% attention and positive energy and love to them. Age-appropriate activities, so that you do something that they enjoy, do something that you enjoy together. And listening. These are some of the things. And I've shown you that model to look at all the positive things. And then it's also important in terms of disciplining with peace and respect to look at any negatives that are happening. Because what you want to do is you want to eliminate those. And so to eliminate those, how do you do that? And so there's many, many, many ways to do it. So many ways. One of the things is when you give appreciation, or when you're letting someone know something that you appreciate, when you're doing homework with a child, you know, describe what they're doing. If it's a little child showing you a picture, you may describe, oh, you used this color and this color, and you drew this and this. It's not the praise words that matter. It's the love. It's the eye contact. The words are descriptive, so the child knows you're noticing what they did. But what they want is that contact. And so that's so much more important than good, and you're on to something else. Spend that few seconds. When they're doing their homework and they're having a hard time, to point out what they're doing well. But always know that at the end of that interaction, it's important that there be positivity in the mind, that there is a positive flow of energy. So how would you feel if you're a wife listening to this, if your husband said, gee, that was really delicious? That's great, right? The meal was really delicious. I really enjoyed it. And that's great. It has a nice flow of energy. They're appreciating. And appreciation is the currency of human relationships. The flow of love, the flow of camaraderie, the flow of regard, the flow of enjoying being together. These are some of the delights of life. And so don't ruin it by saying, that was so delicious. I wish you'd cook like that all the time. That completely ruins it, doesn't it? The wife could do the same with a husband. It was so wonderful that you did this. I don't know why you didn't do that years ago. I mean, how long have we been talking about this? And yet you're finally doing it. You know, you ought to really listen to what I say a little more often. It gets annoying sometimes. Have you ruined the praise? Have you ruined the positive flow yet? Yes. So with children, they do well on their homework and you say, you know, if you'd only settle down like this, every afternoon when we did homework, you would be a much better student. You know, I really get tired of nagging you. Okay, so when there's positive language, stop when there's that flow. If you need to do a correction, yes, do a correction. But there's that's a whole nother issue. A correction has to, well, I would suggest that a correction be undertaken with thought, with thinking deeply about it, with making sure that there's a good relationship. I'm going to go way over my time. I'm going to have to stop soon. But I remember one time there was a mother, and she'd been in a parenting group that I'd done. So we'd spent 8 weeks, one session a week together. And she came up to me one day and she said, Diane, you know, I'm having such a problem. And I said, what's that? And she said, my son has started playing this horrible rap music in our house, and I really don't like it. And I said, well, how's your relationship? Because she wanted to know what to do. And she said, it's good. I just finished the parenting class. Our relationship is great. I said, great. And she said, why? And I said, well, if it wasn't good, I'd tell you to come back in 3 weeks. But since it's good, I'll tell you what to do. So she did what I suggested, and her son said, sure, Mom, no problem. I'll be happy not to play that music anymore. So relationship is everything. Okay, I'm going to take some questions now, and then perhaps we can do a little bit of a ending commentary together. But Jabin, are there any questions from our wonderful participants?
Yes, sister. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well now. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So thank you so much, Sister Diane, for today's sharing. What I took from today is managing our own emotions and behavior is the key to teaching kids on how to manage theirs. Which reminds me that whenever we travel in a flight, in a plane, they always tell us that when the oxygen mask drop due to the level of the oxygen in the flight, and that we need to put the mask on ourselves first before we help others, which is a good example that when we are stressed out, exhausted, or overwhelmed, we can't be available for our child. As a matter of fact, for anybody.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And being a perfect parent requires practice that we need to keep trying. And also another thing that I've taken from today's session is we need to bring our conscious attention to what's happening instead of getting hijacked by our own emotions. So yeah, it's a wonderful session. And I think we may need more sessions. I think everybody who's joining me today will agree with me. We may need more insights on how to deal. Another point that you said is, which I really like, that appreciation is the currency of human relationship. Very beautiful. We have a few questions here, which I shall read out to you right now. The first question is about the recording, if it's going to be recorded, this session. And yes, this session is recorded. I shall drop my number at the end of this talk. You can feel free to contact me, or it will be available on my YouTube as well. Okay, the first question is, I see that you are a very patient person. If you could give one advice on patience, what would that be?
Realize how important you are to your child. You're everything to your child. The better your relationship is, the more they are safe. Your relationship is their safety. So if you are patient and listening, they will come to you when they have a problem. If you are patient, if you listen, they will get to know themselves. So for patience, sorry, but I'm going to ask you to read the book that I recommended. I think sometimes that people get impatient when they're frustrated, when they don't know the outcome. I spend a lot of time in the book on talking about a thinking time or a timeout. And if a child is tantruming and you don't know what to do, or a child is having a meltdown, like my great niece that I gave you the message, the story of, and you don't know what to do, we get frustrated. So when we get frustrated, we're impatient. So it's very useful to know what to do. For example, I remember a couple of parents coming to me, and they were saying the mother was really frustrated because her rule was she wanted her child to pick up the toys in the living room before the father came home from work. And so the deal was supposedly that the child would pick up the toys at 10 to 6. So she would be so frustrated because the child wouldn't do it. And so she would end up nagging the child and then yelling at the child, and then they'd be both upset when the father came home. But she didn't know what to do. So a little bit of knowing what to do is really, really useful. You know, I remember when my partner had 2 little girls, and I remember almost instantly in the relationship, the oldest one tested me. And so this was decades ago, and we were leaving a place, and she dropped something on the way to the car, and she said to me, "Pick that up." Well, fortunately, I had been a school psychologist for a number of years, so rather than getting upset with her, or rather than picking it up, in my mind flashed 4 alternatives of different things that I could do. So it was very easy to stay patient, because I knew that to give in to that kind of demand would be a disaster for me and, this new family. And I knew that, if I got angry at her, that our relationship would instantly go downhill. So I was able to stay very patient. And I was able to say to her, because I knew what to do. So I was able to stay very patient. And I said, if you want me to do something for you, you're going to have to ask me in a way that I like. And I walked around her, got in the passenger side. She picked it up, got in the back seat, and off we were. And it was the first and the last time I ever heard that voice from her. So if we know what to do and we're taking care of ourselves, to fill ourselves with love and with peace every day, at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, it's much, much easier. So good luck.
Thank you. Our next question is, how can I communicate with and motivate my teenager when he is not open to speaking with me? There's a second question to it. How much do I talk to him when there is no change and he gets annoyed? And also, if you could give us some tips on how to approach him when he's very quick to close down any attempts to talk.
Okay, a great question. Yeah. So I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I want you to read the chapters on the importance of us in playtime. That's chapter 3. nurturing with love and wisdom, disciplining with peace and respect. And I want you to read the chapter on active listening and on building positive behaviors. In the active listening part, there's a list of blockers and stoppers of things not to do. So the reason teens often don't talk to parents or to adults is because they say something and the parent opposes them. The parent tells them what to do. The parent gives them some kind of negative. But the parent doesn't listen. So I know it sounds really not what you want to hear. But if you want your kids to talk to you, you have to listen to them. So you have a teen. The teen isn't communicating. The teen wants to avoid you. The teen wants to avoid talking to you. So the teen is trying to avoid a lot of advice. Okay? So I'm going to tell you another story. This is a story about a young man who is in a junior high. And so a teenager, 12, 13, I guess 13. So I went to the junior high one day and there was a fire engine parked outside. And I said to the principal, "What's happening, Bob?" And he said, "Oh, it's this kid." He says, "I have a fire engine or a police car in front of the school once or twice every week with this kid." He said, "Diane, can you please see him for counseling?" And I said, "Bob, I don't have any time." And he said, "Please, Diane, I beg you, please see this one kid. He's driving me. He gets gangs of kids to fight each other. He's driving me nuts. He has the whole school in uproar twice a week." So anyhow, I finally agreed to see the kid. So I see this kid. And I said, "Do you know why you're seeing me?" And he said, "Yeah, I suppose I'm seeing you because I create problems." And I said, "Yeah, but I really noticed you don't have any problems with your hands and you're not creating problems with your feet. From what I hear, you're only creating problems with what you say, only with your mouth." And he goes, "Yeah." Well, this kid didn't like to talk. So I'd have him draw. So he'd draw and I'd sit there patiently and watch him draw, which would seem like a waste of time. But he didn't want to talk to any adult. So I found a thing that he liked so we could share space together. And so we shared space together. And he'd draw and I'd be interested. I wouldn't do anything else while he drew. I just watch him draw. And I'd create a nice vibration. And afterwards, I'd say, "Well, tell me about your drawing." And so he'd tell me about his drawing and I'd be interested and we'd talk then. And he'd go, "Oh," and he'd tell me more and I'd say, "Oh, so da-da-da-da." And so we'd talk. And then as we did that, after a little bit of time, he would gradually talk about other things. And within a couple of months, no more fire engines, no more police cars. And so I was just about to release him from counseling after 6 months. And, but I very, very, very rarely gave him advice. We would talk about things and I would listen, but I would very rarely give him advice. Well, at the end of the 6 months, something happened. Somebody stole the skateboard. And this is an incident where he just knew how to get kids riled up. He would usually have, you know, a large group of kids fighting with another group of kids over this and create uproar, or do something else to create uproar in the school. And anyhow, he handled it perfectly, just absolutely perfectly. And I said to him, I said, you know, when your skateboard was stolen, why did you handle it the way you did? And he looked at me and he said, well, you know, I thought about what you said. And he named the 6 pieces of advice I had given him in 6 months. So what happens as parents is we're tempted to jump onto a solution and tell them what to do when they have a problem. And we often go with advice, and we worry about them, and we tell them maybe about the worry and what they should do. And so what happens is, think for a moment how you would feel if your spouse did that to you, was constantly reminding you, constantly telling you how to behave, not really listening to you, but just telling you and providing solutions. So there gets to be a resentment there. And so what you're doing by listening is you're giving respect. And don't give advice unless you have listened. And unless you've listened again, and unless you've listened again, and unless you have good relationship. It's just like when you're talking to a friend. If you talk to a friend and your best friend says, you've poured your heart out, and she says, or he says, what were you thinking? What you should have done is you should have, how would you feel? That you were wrong. But instead, if your friend says, so you felt this way when this happened, so you felt this way, so it was hard when this happened. So when a person listens, they're helping you accept your own feelings. When you accept your own feelings, you're more in a position of coming up with a good solution. Does that make sense? So, I tend to give long answers, don't I? So, my advice, if your teen does not talk to you very much, look at the importance of play in Us Time chapter, building positive behaviors, because positive language and appreciation, and active listen chapters. Actively listen. So, start with good morning. End with good night. Say, good to see you. Create family time. Maybe it's only an hour in the beginning. All cell phones off, including yours. Involve the whole family in Us Time. Maybe you rotate. Maybe you have 15, 20 minutes of Us Time with one of your children. Your spouse does it with another child. You have family time. If you have more than 2 children, maybe an older one plays with a younger one, and you rotate. So you each get individual time. Maybe you do a game. Maybe you involve them in something. Maybe you take a walk together. You ask them what they want to do with the whole family. You have them create. So you build relationship and you start listening and you stop nagging. You stop reminding. There's another story about how you can make that work for you. But you stop those things that are the negatives that get the resentment going. And you just start listening and you actively listen. And they will start talking to you because they want that love from you. And your listening helps them accept themselves. It helps them know when there's danger because they're sensitive to their own feelings. It helps them trust that they can come to you because you really listen and try to understand. And you don't just offer solutions, but you work with them on what they think is important. You have them think about things by saying things like, what would you like to happen? Or how would you feel if this happened to you? So you're a partner in moving toward a value. What would a peaceful solution look like? What would a loveful situation look like? Good luck to you.
Thank you, sister. We have about 4 to 5 questions more. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is a beautiful question, which actually resonates with me also, that how do we do mindful parenting when your child or our child is studying abroad or is staying abroad?
So your child is studying abroad at a university. Okay, so if your child is studying abroad, wonderful. That's great. So do you have a conversation once a week? How often do you have a conversation? So when you have have a conversation. There is one very interesting study, and it talks about a neurotransmitter that is activated when there is a conversation versus a text. And so this neurotransmitter in the brain that is associated with feeling love is activated when there's a phone call. It doesn't rise nearly as much when there's a text. So have a phone conversation. I don't know how often you talk to your child or how often you text, but maybe look at how often that is occurring. And when it does occur, if it's not occurring, then set it up. If you're only texting, then suggest a conversation. But the same rules apply. Be conscious of the space that you're creating. When we give a message, be it appreciation, is there a spoiler? Is there a comparison? Is there telling them a solution? is they're saying, why didn't you? So what is the feeling tone that you're creating during the conversation? When your child is abroad, it's going to be difficult not to worry. That's a reality. And so one of the things that's important is to be aware of your thoughts about that. I always think that it's much better to meditate on your child or to pray for your child every day, because you're thinking of your child every day. So when you're thinking of your child, what kinds of energy, what kinds of vibrations are going towards that child? Is it the vibration of worry? Is it the vibration of concern? Or is it the vibration of peace or the vibration of love? I have a very strange story to tell you about that. Several decades ago, because I'm an old lady now, I had my mother call me. And she said, Diane, your grandmother is in the hospital in a coma, and so I want you to pray for her to get well. And I said, well, Mom, I'd be happy to send her thoughts of love and peace and power so the soul can do what it needs to do. And she said, that's what I mean. I said, great, I'll do that. So I did. I did that night. I did it the next morning. And I just sent lots of love and peace and strength to the being, to the soul. And anyhow, later the next morning, she sat up in bed and she said, get me out of this hospital and take me to the UCLA Medical Center. And her husband was in the room, my grandfather, when she did that. And so he arranged for an ambulance to take her to the UCLA Medical Center. And within 24 hours, they had her out of the coma. So meditate or pray for your child every day, but don't worry about them. You don't want that energy to go towards them. You want that love to go towards them, that peace to go towards them. It's going to take some retraining on yourself. It's going to be a little bit hard initially, but just see them, that beautiful being that you know, and just send that love and peace and strength without attachment, but with great love. This is someone that has been in your life, someone that's very important to you, someone that you are the world to. Whether it feels like that or not at this stage in time. But have a call. Hopefully at least once a week. Some of you may talk more often, some of you less. But what's important is that ask open-ended questions so they can talk to you. Share a few positive things about what's happening with you. Or if you're concerned about something, maybe share it after words if you need to at the time, but share with them an uplifting message. It's been difficult with COVID for many children studying abroad. So actively listen. Again, read that actively listening chapter. Active listen to your child. When your child says they're really worried about this, or they really miss having had a graduation, they really are miss having had that, they're frustrated because of this, actively listen. It, you know, or validate. It must be hard must be hard um, to not have these things. Yeah. So you were really upset when this, oh, so you're looking forward to that. So listen and let them know you hear them by actively listening. But help them have a hopeful attitude towards life. You know, sweetie, I know that's really difficult right now, but, you know, staying safe and keeping others safe is the caring, compassionate thing to do right now. And I think that by keeping ourselves safe and keeping others safe and creating a compassionate space around us, we will be able to turn around some of the things happening in the world that are so hard right now. So give a hopeful message. Help them be hopeful. Good luck.
That was so beautiful, sister. So communicating, make a call instead of texting. And like you said, active communication, that is what is important. Our next question is, how does parent separation or sleeping in different bedroom impact kids, and how do we manage it?
How is parent separating?
Yeah, so how does parent separation or
Okay.
sleeping in different bedrooms impact kids, and how do we manage it?
Okay. So I would say that what's most important is the relationship between the parents and with the parents and the children. So as long as the relationship is good between the parents, then that's what's important. You know, I know that a lot of people, for different reasons, may be in different rooms. Some have those sleep apnea machines, some have other things. But what's important to the children is the relationship between the parents. If a child is going to bed at night and the parents are yelling at each other, the child is scared. If the child is very young and the parents are yelling at each other, then the child is afraid, because when children are little, they're egocentric. So the child will be afraid that they caused a problem somehow, that they did something and it caused a problem. So it's the relationship with the parents that are important. So in your relationship with each other, you're modeling many types of things. You're modeling love, you're modeling peace, you're modeling a way of being, you're modeling communication, you're modeling whether there's appreciation or whether there's blame. So it isn't that sleeping in separate bedrooms is going to be a problem. It's fighting that's going to be a problem. It's trying to get the kids to side with you and blame the other parent that's a problem. It's those types of things that are the problem. If the parents can be kind and loving and peaceful and understanding. And, you know, relationships take work. Relationships take work. They take work on ourselves. They take work in communication. There are people that teach fair fighting, for example. So when you have a disagreement, have your disagreement not in front of the children, but learn how to fight fair. Even better, learn how to communicate your feelings under the anger. You know, under the anger is the hurt and the fear. Are you both being so kind to each other and so respectful that you can actually say, I feel a little bit hurt when you say this. And it would help me if you'd say it in this way instead. Because when you say it this way, I get a little sensitive. I don't feel cared for. But if you could say it in a different way, I would feel much more valued. And I know it's a silly thing, it's a little thing, but it would really, it's important to me. So to communicate, there once was the belief years ago that couples that got along well didn't talk about problems. And when it was actually studied, they found the opposite was true. The couples that have violent relationships, the couples that have harsh, unsatisfying relationships, very rarely talk about problems. They stuff it because they don't want an argument. Because when they have arguments, they've been stuffing things, so they explode. So you have an explosion and another explosion, and you have flames and more flames. And there's damage when there's a fire. Damage to the relationship. Damage to the treasure of goodwill that is in each one of us. And when that treasure of goodwill and love is harmed, it's really hard. There is a beautiful theorist from many years ago. And she used to talk about a pot of love and how is the pot of love in your family, and that we must keep that pot of love full. And so it's such a good analogy for what's happening in the family. But in this recent study, what they found is that couples that communicate little things actually get along much better. So when you communicate these little things, you're not having to build up. And if you're really practicing mindfulness in your own life and filling yourself with peace and love and knowing the importance of staying above the line, yes, with your children, but absolutely with your spouse, absolutely with your friends, absolutely with everybody in your life. When you have this practice, life is so much easier. It takes a little bit of training, but it's really, really worth it. But when we do that, yes, there can sometimes be a problem, but then you can communicate it. I had a friend that had a problem recently with COVID. And I've known this friend for years. And all of a sudden, this friend started giving me a hard time. And it was because his situation had changed in regards to the financial situation in the world. And so he was scared. And so all of a sudden, the language to me became very different. And so I simply, wrote him a letter. Because he was so upset, I thought that he wouldn't be able to perhaps react completely appropriately if I told him face to face. So I do a 4-step correction process, 4-step correction process. It's in the book too. And I start out with all the beautiful virtues, and then my concern, and then the benefits and the disadvantages, and then making a plan. And so I shared with him all his beautiful virtues and qualities and how I valued the friendship. And then I said, in the last short amount of time, your comments have been challenging, antagonistic. And I want you to remember that I am your friend and I'm not willing to be a target. And step 3, I'm sure we'll get through this, and that our relationship, our friendship will be even stronger after, after this. And I'm available to talk about it. And if you want to talk about it tomorrow, I can be available. So anyhow, his response was, I am so sorry. You're absolutely right. It will never happen again. And then we had a follow-up conversation. But so, yeah, it's important to communicate respectfully and yet call people out when the communication isn't up to par. You want to have the communication always respectful. And sometimes we can be tolerant when somebody's going through something. But if our children are being nonstop respectful, or, yes, work on relationship first. Always work on relationship first before you give a correction. But stay above the line. The kids need to see a cordial relationship between you and your spouse. It will give them happiness for the rest of their life, because they will then know how to communicate in a way where they can communicate with love and respect with others. Good luck. Jabin, are you still there?
Sorry, sister. I forgot to unmute myself. It's taken longer than expected because we have plenty questions and more questions are coming in. Are you still okay taking some questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How do we face our children who has been given wrong information, or from one side they have been feeded information about their parents or their other parents? How do we handle that?
I'm not really sure about the question.
So
Do
what
you
I
mean
understand,
in a situation of a divorce, you mean?
yes. So what I understand from the situation here is the parents are separated,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the parent has spoken or fed the wrong information regarding the other parent to the child. So how do we handle that?
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's difficult, because what it means is there's been a separation, or a separation with a lot of anger and a lot of hurt, and that's very difficult. And it's hard, but my advice would be to always model values-based communication to your children. Always stay in your dignity. Always stay in right action. But if they're, so basically build a positive relationship with your child. when they come, play in us time every day, listening, acknowledging their feelings. And now if they're saying things like, my mom, my dad, or daddy said, or mommy said, that whatever. So keep yourself in your love, your peace, your strength, and actively listen first. So daddy said that I, so mommy said that I. So actively listen. But actively listen, not with anger. Actively listen so that they feel understood. This will take a little bit of detachment on your part, but you want your child to feel safe sharing anything. So rather than saying, well, that, and name calling, no. So active listen first, then second, you can explain in an age-appropriate way to the child, so the child has a little bit more understanding of this type of thing. So an age-appropriate way to a young child would be, so let's say the child is 7 and the child is telling you this, and you say, you know, mommy and daddy are separated, and it's hard on everyone. It's hard for you because you're not with both of us, and you've been telling me that that's a little scary sometimes, and it sounds like it's really confusing when daddy says this and this about me, and I just want you to know that sometimes when people are hurt, that they get angry. And so sometimes they share things that are a little bit mean because they're hurt and because they're angry. But what's important that you know is that daddy loves you forever and mommy loves you forever. And we will both love you forever. And I'm sure that in time, your dad and I are going to be able to talk again. And you'll be able to feel more cooperation and harmony between us. And we're working on creating that. But sometimes when we're hurt inside, then our angry voice gets the upper hand. And so mean things sometimes come out. But your daddy is a good person, just like I'm a good person. And we both love you. So when things are said like this, don't worry about it. But know that I'm good, know that your daddy's good, and know that in time it'll be better. Okay, did you want to play now? What do you want to play today? Or you want to help me cook now? What shall we do together? Shall we take a walk now? After this serious conversation, maybe we need to go. Maybe we need to go. Maybe we need to roughhouse. Maybe we need to draw. Maybe we need to get out some energy. Maybe we need to listen to a song and scream and shout and yell. Whatever. But do another activity again. So 1, active listen rather than defend yourself in a space of detachment, but love for your child and compassion for your child because they're having a hard time. So active listening and maybe even validating first, and then sharing meaning, giving understanding, but don't name call the spouse. Don't say negative things about the spouse, ever. Just explain the dynamic that when people get hurt, they get angry, and so sometimes they say mean things. But in time, it will be better because peace and love and respect always work out in the end. Good luck. So age appropriate, that was for a 7-year-old. You'll need to do it in a different tone of voice to an older child, but same principles apply. It's tough. Good luck. Nurture yourself during the separation. But never say anything about another that you don't want to be said about you. So guard the mouth. I visited my older brother just a couple of weeks ago while I was on this little vacation. And he and his wife are have a lot of Christian things around the home. And one of them I loved. It was a little small box, and it was in a little windowsill above the kitchen sink. And the little small box, it said, "Dear Lord, keep your arm around my shoulder and your hand over my mouth." Okay, good luck. Next question.
Thank you, sister. That what you said, that control the mouth, that is what is very, very important, because sometimes we just, our emotions, our anger, our frustration just overcome us. The next question is, sometimes my teen daughter wants to do what she wants to do, which is inappropriate, or we need to take care of, for example, like having naughty friends. Please advise the tips that we need to do or we can use so that our teenage daughter can listen to us and be obedient. During this pandemic, our child likes to go out and do outdoor activities, which is not right. So how do we handle that?
Okay, great. Yes, your comment, Jabin, that sometimes our emotions do take over us is very true. And sometimes we have to control that when it comes to children. And it's hard to do so. It's much harder to do so with our with our partner. But yes, we must control it with the children. It's so important. And if you can't control it, time yourself out. You know, if you can't control it and you're losing it with your kids, say, guys, I need 10. Guys, I need 15. You know, why don't you go in another part of the house, or why don't you go and I'm going to, you know, if you feel you're going to lose it, disappear. Say, guys, I need a timeout. And separate yourself and get yourself together. You know, your children know how you're feeling before you're feeling it. So if you're going to yell at them when they're doing their homework, say, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea. You know, get out of there. Control yourself. Breathe in peace. Breathe in love. Relax. Go away. You know. Okay, so teenage daughters. Relationship. Yeah, very important, especially with boys, yes, but oh, so important with girls. So again, nurturing with love and wisdom, disciplining with peace and respect. Chapter 3, the importance of us in playtime. Building positive behaviors chapter, active listening. Read those 3 chapters over and over until you have it down. Build relationship. There is a chapter in the at the very last part of the book, next to the last chapter, and it says, when there's been anger in the family. And this chapter deals with damage, and when there's been damage in the family. And it gives a step-by-step process of what happens and how to, well, it doesn't give a step-by-step practice of what happens. It gives a step-by-step practice of what you need to do in order to recover from the damage. So step 1, step 2, step 3. And so there's steps for yourself as the parent and steps of what you do with the children. But if you're going to make suggestions to a teenager, unless you have a good relationship, it's not going to work, because they're going to do what they want. Kids need love somewhere. We all need love. If we're not getting love, we go looking for it. So kids are the same. So if they're not getting love from you, if they don't have love from the family, they're going to go looking for it. And that's dangerous for girls. It's dangerous for boys, but it's even more dangerous for girls. So build relationship. Build relationship for at least 3 weeks. Rekindle that love. Pray, meditate for them every day. Get the gratitude going. Get the family time going. Start listening. Stop the blockers and stoppers. Start timing yourself out instead of getting angry. Model love, peace, respect. Become more peaceful yourself. Enjoy them. Find something to do together. Find something to love together. Maybe it's movies. I remember I had a few years ago, 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I was working with a group of children, teens, and they were all reading this series of books, and I was really surprised they were reading that series of books. So I thought, well, why are they reading that series of books? It's so awful. So what I did is I ordered this series of books and I read it so we could talk about it. I thought, what is the attraction in this? It was when the Hunger Games were very popular. So I read the books because I wanted to understand. So we had a wonderful discussion. Wonderful discussion. And we could look at the values of the heroine in the book. And we could look at the values, and we could look at the anti-values, and we could really have a discussion. So find out about them. Be part of what you can be part of. If they're really interested in something, take the time to learn about it. And when you're learning about it, don't sit there in judgment. Sit there in a non-judgmental space. Remember, you, the parent, what you're creating is a loving space around them. You're creating a safe space for them that is a refuge, a beautiful, beautiful refuge for them. This is what you want to do. You are their safety. A good relationship with you is their safety. Because before they do something stupid, they will come to you or they will think about you. Both of those things can stop a negative behavior that's life-changing for them. So build relationship. When you build relationship, then there is cooperation. So I'm sorry to harp on it, but it works. That mother I told you that she said to me, what shall I do about this problem? I said, do you have a good relationship? Okay, then what you do is you go to your son and you say, you know, one of the things I treasure, the chief thing I treasure in my family is, the chief thing that I treasure in life is my family. And I love you so much. You're so important for me. But lately, you know, it's been really hard the last couple of weeks listening to the words of these songs that you're playing now. I just really don't like those words in our house. And he just looked at her and he says, okay, Mom, I'll stop. But she had been working on relationship for a couple of months. So work on relationship for a couple of months. So I've told you some of the key elements. So play in us time every day, the positive language, the active listening. You can have meditation or prayers together. You can have gratitude circles at night together. You can have family time. Involve them in family time. Involve them at what they want to do. Have your spouse join. Create together. Decide what you want to do. Gradually increase your family time. 2-3 hours a day. I know one of the spouses may say, one of the partners may say, we don't have time for this. Your parenting and your relationship with each other as partners. This is what gives happiness in life, isn't it? Relationships give us a lot of happiness. So, and feeling understood and valued is so important. So do that with yourself and do it with others. And then very gently, you know, when your daughter comes to you, let's say you have a daughter that's 13 and she says, you know, or I want to go out with this person, da 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 da. So active listen. Active listening doesn't mean that you're agreeing. And then, you know, after you listen, then say, you know, sweetie, I know you really want to do that, but you can't do that. You're not nearly old enough. And the reason for my no is because 1, 2, and 3. And be honest with them about the reasons. Very gently, very respectfully, but be honest about some of the dangers. Regarding going outside with COVID, then, you know, talk about when is it going to be safe? And so start with the positive. You know, you are my treasure. You are my daughter. I love you so much. You're this and this and this to me. So when you're wanting to go out and I'm afraid for you. And I know it's really hard. It's been 6 months now. So let's think of ways where you can go out some and still be safe and still keep others safe. And, you know I watched it and share, for example, I would say something like, you know, I watched a video on TV and it was a young lady and she was sharing how her grandparents had contacted COVID and infected their mother without realizing it, the wife's mother without realizing it, and the wife's mother died. And say, you know, I'm concerned about other people. And so us wearing a mask is our sign of care and compassion and respect for others. Because how would you feel if one of your friends accidentally gave COVID to her grandmother or her parents? So don't say me, because that's bringing it a little too close, and that's also guilt inducement. She'll make the association herself, so don't make it too near home. It'll hit too hard, and they won't be able to hear anything you say. So make it far distance, and emphasize the need that wearing the mask is the sign of care and compassion, and say, what is the situation? I know you need to get out. I'm hearing that. So how can you do it so it's safe? And so you're keeping your friends safe, your friends' parents safe, your friends' grandparents safe, because how will all of you feel if anything ever happens? So discuss it from a sensible viewpoint and see if you can come up with a solution that's mutually satisfying to both. By the time they're 16, 17, 18, you know, they're 18, they're an adult in most countries, but 16, 17, yeah, they're going to be on their own pretty soon. They're pretty soon going to be going to university, either abroad or where you are. And so they're going to be independent. So help build this care and compassion and responsibility. Don't guilt induce, but try to come up with some mutually comfortable decisions. And don't go into the authoritarian mode, but be in your caring parent mode. I remember my dad, and he only once disciplined me. And his discipline was to come in and talk to me for 15 minutes. And the message was, your mom told me that you and Debbie walked and you went inside the Greyhound bus depot today, and you were near that. And I want you to know that your mom and I both feel that that's an unsafe place, and we don't want you to go there again. And, you or Debbie, you're both very important to us. And we really, really, when you're together, when you're alone, it's really important that you stay safe and you only go to safe places. Can you do that? So that was the only discipline I ever received from him. But he gave me all the love in the world and modeled the values, so it was easy. Okay, next question.
Thank you, sister. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I think what you said again, be a model of your values, and how you started the talk by saying that be that M&M, because the child needs that sweetness from you. And what the child and like we all need is love.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really beautiful. And I think we need another session on building relationships. That would be very good. So yeah, it would be nice. It would be wonderful if you could give us some time and maybe you could share with us on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
Before we end this session, if you could guide us with some thoughts that we could contemplate on when we feel anxious.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for inviting me and for your very warm and loving way of moderating the session. And I want to thank all the parents for your time and your attention, but also for really working at giving the best to your children. I know that the world is a troubled place right now, and parenting has never been harder. Children are exposed so much to so many negative influences. And, years ago, decades ago, it was much easier to parent because there weren't so many negative experiences. So this is why it's even more important to give more time right now. So congratulations to all of you for tuning in to hear new insights, perhaps, about parenting, and for wanting to give the best to your children always. And of course, for loving them so very deeply. Okay, so let's, if you want to close your eyes, so you can keep them open, but let yourself take a deep breath. And breathe in and let yourself be surrounded by peace. Let the light of peace surround you. And as you breathe in, let your muscles relax. And let that light of peace perhaps be a thick light, a more dense light. So the peace increases. And let yourself absorb that peace. So let the muscles relax more, absorbing that light of peace. And let you, the soul, relax in that light of peace. As you relax, I want you to think of 3 values that are most important to you, and most important to you, especially in regard to your family, to your spouse, to your children. What values do you want to have in you when you relate to your children, when you relate to your family? Choose one of those. And let it play across your mind. And choose another value and a 3rd value. And as you play these values in your mind, let yourself feel those values. And I'm going to make a rash assumption and assume that one of those values is love. And so let that light of peace around you change into the light of love. And breathe in that light of love. And that light of love, let that light of love be absorbed into your body, into the muscles. And let yourself relax more deeply. Let your whole body relax, including your face. And perhaps take God's love and let that light of love just shine down on you. And open yourself up to that light of love. And that light of love pour around you. You are a loving being. You are a loving spirit, soul. You are God's beloved child. You are a treasure of love. And the more love you take in from the highest one, the more strength you can take in. Whenever I take in peace and whenever I take in love, strength increases. And when that peace and love and strength grow, anxiety disappears. It melts away. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. You are love. God is love. Peace and love are the nature of all. It's just that some have forgotten it. And when the love dries up, they become afraid and they reach out for power. And ego and selfishness destroy. But love and peace, these are your treasures. So breathe these in. Allow yourself to be surrounded by this, body, soul, spirit, whatever you wish to call it. And the more you create moments of this, the more you say, I am God's treasure of peace, of love, of the light of love. I am the pillar of love and peace for my family. I am the foundation of love and peace for my family. I am the shining star of love and peace for my family. And when I stay in this space, when I stay in this vibration, I not only create strength for me, I create the vibrations where each one in this family and around me in my world can be treated with love, with respect. They are valued, they are understood, they are safe. And this is a treasure that will allow them to grow into their highest beauty, their fullness. For each being, each spirit, each soul has a purpose. As a parent, part of my purpose is to be in the space where I create that. I am love. I am peace. I am the creator of beauty and well-being and goodness for our world. Take in a deep breath. Relax into your peace, into your love. Acknowledge your own strength. You are powerful. Much love, everyone. Good
Thank
night.
you, sister. Thank you so much. Good night and have a good rest. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. I've dropped my number in the chat box. Our next session will be on the topic Facing Your Fears on coming Saturday at 6 p.m. Jakarta. So do hope you all can join in. Do send me a message so that I can forward you the details. Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Stay safe. Stay blessed. Good night, Sister Diane.
Lovely to be with you all. Good night.
Thank you. Om Shanti.